Alright, so in this video, I'm going to show y'all why the Rockets are by far the easiest team in the guard in the NBA. Easiest team. Now, you might look at me like I'm bugging. They be scoring a trillion points. James Harden averaged 1 trillion points per game. How the heck can they be the easiest team in the guard in the NBA? Alright, so I talked about this. If you look at my YouTube channel, I talked about this like 8 months ago. Alright, on why they're the easiest team to guard in the NBA. But essentially, with their offense, so Mike D'Antoni is labeled a genius as an offensive coach. Why? I don't know. But all his offenses is really predicated on 2 things: a whole bunch of shooters and a dominant ball handler. A dominant ball handler that's a great decision maker, right? James Harden and Steve Nash. All right. Whenever Mike D'Antoni has success, he has those 2 components. All right. Now, the flip side of that is, right, you got a lot of guys that can shoot, but you don't have a lot of guys that can create. All right. So James Harden is who he is. He can't be stopped. He can't be stopped. He's made up moves, all right, in the NBA. He can't be stopped. So right here, right, you can't stop James Harden one-on-one. So what the Mavericks did in the 4th quarter and overtime, they just said, screw it. We are sending a double team at James Harden right away. And they sent a slow double team. Why? So James Harden wouldn't split it. This is a beautiful concept that I talked about 8 months ago. Why more teams isn't doing this and making all these other bums on the Houston Rockets team beat you? I have no idea. And I'm not saying that y'all bums in general, but in the NBA, essentially y'all are. Austin Rivers, we want Austin Rivers shooting that shot time after time after time, right? We don't want James Harden doing that. Why? Because James Harden is extremely good at shooting and passing, right? And you really can't stop him from getting wherever he wants. You know, so when you give James Harden all them components, you give the Houston Rockets all them components at the same time, it's extremely hard to stop. So the Mavericks just said, we're going to just play on personnel. They just picked on Robert Covington to death in this 4th quarter and overtime. Why? Because he's a streaky shooter, A, but B, more importantly, he's a shaky decision maker. Why? Because he's not used to doing that. Robert Covington gets paid to play defense and make shots. He doesn't get paid to make decisions and handle the basketball. So, you know, as you see, Dallas sent the slow double. James Harden made the right basketball move, but it was to Robert Covington, who's not used to making good decisions. Not used to making decisions. Understand? This might sound like a small nuance to all of y'all, but it's just personnel driven. That's all it is. Now, PJ Tucker's a great 3-point shooter from the corner, but it's still a shot. It's still a 3. That's why all y'all people that get in love with 3s is better than 2s, I hear you, but it's going to come times where you missing shots, you know? And that's what you got to bank on as an opposing team going against this Rockets team. Again, right over half court, they send a double, right? No respect for Covington on that right wing at all, right? And it's not even a lack of respect. It's because James Harden is so good, you know, and he's so ball dominant, right? And look at right here. It's just simple, right? Robert Covington isn't driving the basketball ever. But he's forced to do that because they sent in this double team at Harden, and you got a shot clock in the NBA. I think it's just genius. Now, I have no clue why more teams isn't doing this to ball dominant players like James Harden, right? Like, Covington is not used to doing these type of things, you know, and everybody outside of Westbrook isn't used to doing these things on the Rockets. And me personally, I'm taking my chance with Westbrook, and I'm fine with it, doing the same thing to Russell Westbrook. So again, as you see, look, Westbrook's man leaves him and goes to double James Harden. I'm fine with that. And look at the rotations on the back by the Mavericks. And this is when your rotations as a coach, you got to practice this. Your rotations got to be great because now you play on 3-on-4 in the back. And as you see, the Mavericks' rotations was great. Everybody came ball side. Who do they flip it to? Robert Covington. Couldn't put a brick in the ocean, right? And he makes them from time to time. Don't get me wrong. He's a decent shooter. But I'm taking that chance of him making 33s in the game instead of James Harden just getting 50 and getting layups. Because that's what's going to happen. You can't stop this guy. He's too great. And this is an even more impressive job by the Mavericks of not leaving PJ Tucker that time and letting Robert Covington. So they took it even a step further, and they played the percentages of the remaining 4 guys on the court. I think it's just genius level basketball.
Harden picks up Doncic.
It's just genius to see. I have no idea why the Mavericks didn't do this more often. I think I got an idea, but I don't know why more teams isn't doing this to the Rockets. I have no clue. I have no clue. It's a simple way to take James Harden out of the game and make these other guys beat you. And we know how many shots Russell Westbrook needs to get up to get his points. You know, so yeah, he's nowhere near as efficient as James Harden. So I want Russell Westbrook in that decision. And as you see, James Harden started getting frustrated and turning the ball over. Very simple, fellas.
Inside.
All right, so in closing, James Harden is the most, offensively, he probably is the most talented offensive player I've ever seen and come across in the NBA. Again, he's created moves like that we've never seen before. So, and he's by far 100% the best pick and roll player I've ever seen in the world, ever, right? So with saying that is, again, my point is you're not going to stop him one-on-one. It's impossible. It's impossible to stop James Harden one-on-one. So as a coach, what's your next recipe to slow the Houston Rockets down? It's a very simple thing. From high school level to the NBA level, it's a very simple thing. PJ Tucker isn't used to taking people off the dribble. Robert Covington isn't used to taking people off the dribble. Russell Westbrook, obviously he's a good player, but he's a volume shooter. He's a volume scorer. He needs his attempts to get his shots. He's nowhere near as efficient as James Harden, right? So when you got a D'Antoni system that, again, people think he's a genius, I really don't understand it, but he needs a ball-dominant person to run his system, right? And he's just putting shooters around him. He'll do some little tricks in between, you know, with his offensive system, but for the most part, that's what it is, right? A very simple thing. Pick and roll basketball with 3 or 4 shooters and an athlete, Amari Stoudemire, Clint Capella, diving to the rim for alley-oops with a ball-dominant player. It's a very simple offense to stop if you do this, if you send that double. Now, again, like I said earlier, I got a theory why Dallas didn't do it the entire game, because it is draining. Now, that's the flip side about doing this. It is draining. You got a lot of rotations to make on the back, and that's a lot of running around, right? But if you don't have superior defenders switching off of James Harden and making him work extremely hard, which most teams in the NBA don't have, you got to consider this and got to start getting creative and start trying to think out the box, because you can't stop this man. You cannot stop this man one-on-one. He is too creative and just freaking talented at what he does. So this is the next best alternative, and it's a great alternative, which is why I say that the Houston Rockets is the easiest team, by far the easiest team to guard in the NBA if you do this. That's simple. Subscribe to the channel, comment below. Again, anybody that disagrees with me, I would love to hear your response. I'm all for it. All right, talk to y'all soon.